You open a tomb sealed for 4,500 years. Dust falls. Something glints inside. Nobody has breathed this air since the pyramids rose. Egypt keeps doing this to scientists. Every few years, the ground gives up something impossible. A tomb nobody expected. A skeleton that shouldn't exist. A device too advanced for its time. For over a century, Egyptologists thought they'd found everything. They were wrong. Badly wrong. In 2025 alone, archaeologists found a pharaoh's tomb, the first royal burial found since 1922. That's the year they found Tutankhamun. This new discovery might be even stranger. Let's start with the body that broke the rules. In Saqqara, researchers pulled up a coffin from 4,300 years ago. Inside was a man archaeologists nicknamed simply the Potter. His skeleton showed muscle marks no royal ever had. Spine curved, right leg built like an athlete's. Scientists realized he'd spent his life spinning a pottery wheel with his foot for decades. That's a job description written directly into bone. DNA testing on his remains told an even bigger story. In 2025, scientists sequenced his full genome. It was the oldest full Egyptian genome ever recovered. 80% of his ancestry traced to North Africa, but 20% came from somewhere unexpected. Western Asia, Anatolia, the Levant. Someone, or their ancestors, had traveled thousands of miles, long before anyone thought Egypt had outside contact. This rewrote timelines historians trusted for decades, and that's just one skeleton. Let's go back to the pyramids themselves. Everyone assumes we know how they were built. We don't, not fully. In 2025, researchers scanned the Great Pyramid's east face. Ground-penetrating radar, ultrasound, electrical resistivity. They found two anomalies hidden behind solid stone. Empty spaces. Voids. Nobody knows what's inside. This isn't the first hidden void found in Giza. In 2017, a scan revealed a chamber the size of an airliner above the Grand Gallery, completely sealed. Nobody has entered it. Nobody knows its purpose. 4,500 years, and the pyramid still hides secrets. Now think about how it survives earthquakes. Egypt sits near active fault lines, yet the Great Pyramid has stood through thousands of tremors. In 2025, engineers finally figured out why. The internal design absorbs seismic stress like a shock absorber. Ancient builders understood physics were still modeling with software. No modern textbook taught them that. They learned it through trial, failure, and 4,000 years of pressure. Speaking of failures, Egypt built plenty before getting it right. The bent pyramid changes angle halfway up. Builders realized mid-construction the first angle would collapse, so they adjusted, in real time, on a structure this massive. That kind of engineering flexibility shouldn't have existed yet. Now picture the tools they had to work with. Copper chisels, wooden sleds, ropes made from plant fiber, no iron, no pulleys as we understand them. Yet blocks weighing 2.5 tons were placed within millimeters of precision. Some blocks near the king's chamber weigh over 80 tons, moved without a single wheel. In 2013, papyrus scrolls solved part of the mystery, found at Wadi al-Jarf on the Red Sea coast. A man named Merer, a supervisor who moved limestone blocks by boat. His logbook is the oldest inscribed papyrus ever found. Quick pause here. Don't scroll past this. Like the video and subscribe to the channel, and we keep going. Merer describes hauling stone through a canal system. A canal system archaeologists didn't know existed. It connected straight to the pyramid's base. Water, not just muscle, moved the pyramids into place. Now let's talk about something even stranger. A pharaoh's obelisk. It stood in Paris since 1836. Millions of tourists walked past it every year. Nobody noticed what was carved at the very top. During a pandemic walk in 2021, one professor looked closer. Jean-Guillaume Orlet-Pelletier, an Egyptologist from the Sorbonne. He got permission to climb the monument himself. What he found up there had never been translated. Hieroglyphs, invisible from the ground for 2 centuries. They declared Ramses II, chosen by the gods to rule. Propaganda, carved 3,200 years ago, hiding in plain sight. Meant to be read from boats arriving at festivals. Nobody in Paris was supposed to see it at all. Now to the tombs themselves, because Egypt just found another one. In February 2025, archaeologists found the tomb of Thutmose II, a pharaoh who ruled 33 centuries ago, called the Missing Pharaoh for good reason. His tomb was the first royal burial found since Tutankhamun's. It sat buried under wadis near the Valley of the Kings. But when they finally opened it, the tomb was empty. No mummy, no treasure, just painted walls. The walls held scenes from the Amduat, a sacred text reserved only for kings. That decoration is what proved this was royal at all. Evidence suggests floodwater damaged the tomb just 6 years later, so they secretly moved the body and treasures elsewhere. Archaeologist Piers Litherland believes a second tomb exists, fully intact, still hidden somewhere in the desert. Egypt's biggest mystery right now might still be underground. Let's go deeper into what mummies reveal about their makers. In 2024, scientists studied mummies with gold tongues, thin gold foil shaped and placed inside the mouth, meant to let the dead speak in the afterlife. Some tongues were solid gold, a fortune, buried forever. Other mummies held something even stranger, fragments of Homer, a piece of the Iliad tucked inside the wrappings. Greek poetry buried in an Egyptian body centuries later. Proof that cultures blended far more than textbooks admit. Some burials were shockingly ordinary, which is its own shock. In Aswan, archaeologists found over 30 family tombs, used for nearly 1,000 years by regular people. 30 to 40% of the bodies were children. Anemia and infection were the leading causes of death. Not curses, not mystery, just hard, fragile lives. Science keeps proving the myths wrong, one skeleton at a time, but some finds genuinely defy easy explanation. In 2022, scientists re-examined an object called the Bes vase, a 2,200-year-old container shaped around the god Bes. Inside, residue testing found a dark red concoction, a hallucinogenic mixture brewed deliberately. Cinnamon, honey, and a plant-based psychoactive compound, disguised to look and taste like blood. The myth says the goddess Hathor drank it and fell asleep. Bes tricked her to stop a bloodthirsty rampage. Priests may have reenacted this ritual using real drugs, a religious rite built entirely around a controlled hallucination. Egypt wasn't just monuments and kings, it was chemistry too. Speaking of chemistry, look at how they treated disease. In 2024, researchers examined a skull nearly 4,500 years old. It showed dozens of small lesions from cancer, but also cut marks made by a surgical tool. Someone had attempted a surgical treatment for tumors 4,500 years before modern oncology existed. They didn't cure it, but they tried. That single fact rewrites when medicine as an idea began. Now picture the tools they used to heal, not harm. Copper needles for suturing, honey as an antiseptic, moldy bread applied to wounds. It worked more than they knew. That mold likely contained early natural antibiotics. They didn't understand bacteria. They understood results. Let's shift to something animal, and honestly unsettling. In Saqqara, archaeologists uncovered sarcophagi full of mummified cats. Millions of cats were bred and killed specifically for burial, not pets, an industry built entirely around sacred animals. Scans later showed most cats were killed under 2 years old. Some coffins contained no cat at all, just bones and cloth. Fraud, even in the world of sacred offerings. Temples were selling faith, and sometimes faking the product. Now to a discovery that reads like science fiction. The observatory. In 2024, archaeologists found Egypt's oldest known astronomical observatory, built at Buto in the Nile Delta, roughly 2,500 years old, precisely aligned to the stars. Priests tracked constellations to predict floods and set calendars. Their calendar was accurate enough to guide farming for centuries. They mapped the sky without telescopes, just stone and patience. Let's talk about a discovery buried underwater instead of sand. Off the coast near Alexandria, archaeologists mapped a submerged port. Streets, harbor walls, and building foundations, all sunken. Some researchers believe it may connect to Cleopatra's final resting place. Her tomb has never been found, not once in 2,000 years. If it's down there, the sea has kept the secret perfectly. Back on land, Saqqara delivered yet another shock in 2025. The multi-chambered tomb of Prince Wasser-if-Re, son of King Userkaf from the 5th dynasty. Inside sat a massive false door carved from pink granite, a door meant only for the soul to pass through. The living were never meant to open it. Just steps away, another temple resurfaced after centuries lost. The Valley Temple linked to King Niuserre's sun cult at Abu Sir. Half of it had been found decades earlier and forgotten. The rest sat waiting under sand this entire time. Every layer of Saqqara seems to hide another layer underneath. Now for one of the strangest genetic finds of the decade. Remember that potter from Saqqara with the 20% mystery ancestry? His genome is helping rewrite how Egypt actually began. Scientists always assumed the Nile Valley developed in isolation. This genome proves migration and trade started far earlier. People moved between the Levant and Egypt before written history, long before the first pharaoh ever wore a crown. One skeleton, one genome, an entire theory overturned. Let's return briefly to Tutankhamun, since he still isn't done shocking us. In recent scans, researchers noticed his dagger blade wasn't Egyptian iron. It was forged from meteorite metal, confirmed by its unusual nickel and cobalt composition, a blade literally made from a fallen star. Buried with a teenage pharaoh who ruled for less than a decade, Tutankhamun's tomb keeps producing new secrets a century later because most of it has never been fully studied. Now, a discovery that unsettled even seasoned archaeologists: mass graves. In the Sahara, researchers found large circular graves predating Egypt itself. Dozens of bodies, arranged deliberately, far older than the pyramids. A civilization existed in the desert before Egypt as we know it, one that left no writing behind to explain itself. We know it existed, we don't know who they were. Let's talk about a lion pendant that turned out to be much more. Originally, it looked like a simple board game piece, used in a game called Hounds and Jackals. But researchers found it had been altered later. Baboon figures were added, turning it into a religious object, a toy repurposed into something sacred centuries after it was made. Objects in Egypt rarely stayed just one thing. Now, the funerary shroud that reveals how belief actually worked. A 2,500-year-old bead net shroud, woven with thousands of tiny beads. It depicted the deceased transforming into the god Osiris. Death wasn't an ending in this belief system. It was a promotion. Every bead placed by hand for a journey nobody could verify. That's thousands of hours of labor for an idea about the afterlife. Let's step back to the copper mystery at Giza. Soil samples near the pyramids showed copper levels 5 times normal, from thousands of copper tools used and discarded during construction. Copper is soft. It dulls fast, especially cutting limestone and granite. Workers likely sharpened and replaced tools constantly, for years. The soil itself became an accidental record of the labor. Chemistry preserved what no scroll ever wrote down. Let's talk about the workers themselves, since that's its own myth. For years, people believed slaves built the pyramids. Excavated worker villages tell a very different story. Skeletons show broken bones that were carefully set and healed. Slaves weren't given that kind of medical care back then. Workers ate meat regularly, based on cattle bones found nearby. Graffiti found on the blocks names organized labor gangs. One gang proudly called itself Friends of Khufu. These were paid laborers, organized, fed, and even entertained, not chained prisoners. Skilled crews with pride in their work. That single discovery erased a myth that lasted 2,000 years. Let's return to one more strange body, the bog-like burial. Some remains in Egypt weren't wrapped or embalmed at all, buried directly in hot desert sand, which preserved them naturally. These predate formal mummification by centuries. Accidental preservation likely inspired the entire mummification tradition. Priests may have copied what the desert was already doing. Nature invented mummification. Egyptians just perfected it. Now to something recovered from a shipwreck near the coast. Divers found cargo holds still packed with trade goods. Resin, incense, and pottery meant for temples far inland. Proof that Egypt's economy stretched across entire sea routes. A single wreck holds more trade data than some entire archives. Let's revisit the pyramid voids one more time, because they matter. Scientists still debate what those hidden spaces were built for. Some think they relieve weight, protecting the chambers below. Others think they're symbolic, built for reasons we can't measure. Nobody has drilled in. The risk of damage is too high. So the void just sits there, fully mapped, fully sealed, fully unknown. That's the strange part about Egypt. We can see it and still not know it. Let's talk about the Grand Egyptian Museum, since it changed everything too. It finally opened after 2 decades of delays and construction. Thousands of artifacts, some never publicly displayed before, went on view. Full sets of Tutankhamun's belongings, shown together for the first time. Chariots, furniture, jewelry, all reassembled after a century in storage. What was buried to be hidden forever is now behind glass for millions. Let's close with the anomaly nobody has explained yet. Deep in a Saqqara tomb, researchers found a small ceramic figure. It resembled a seated Buddha, centuries before Buddhism existed there. Trade routes may explain it. Or it might be something else entirely. No inscription, no clear context. Just an object that shouldn't fit. Egyptologists still argue about what it actually proves. And that's the truth about Egypt scientists rarely say out loud. For every tomb we open, 10 more questions climb out with it. We've mapped less of Saqqara than we assume. Radar keeps finding shapes underground nobody has touched yet. Some of those shapes are massive, larger than known tombs. Researchers won't say what they think it is, not yet.
Every generation of scientists says the same thing about Egypt. We've probably found most of it by now. Every generation turns out to be wrong. From Howard Carter in 1922 to researchers scanning pyramids in 2025, the sand keeps returning what it swallowed, piece by piece. A genome that rewrites migration history, a blade forged from a falling star, a tomb sealed and emptied in secret 6 years after burial, a hidden void the size of an airplane, still unopened. Every one of these was declared impossible before someone dug it up. So what's actually still buried out there? Nobody knows. That's not a disappointing answer. That's the point. Egypt has been excavated for over 200 years, and it still produces a discovery that breaks a theory almost every year. That's not luck. That's how much is still down there. Somewhere under that sand sits Thutmose II's real tomb, still sealed, still untouched, still waiting. Somewhere near Alexandria, the sea might be hiding Cleopatra herself. Somewhere inside the Great Pyramid, an empty space keeps its silence. Scientists aren't running out of mysteries in Egypt. They're just getting better tools to find the next one. And every tool they build seems to uncover something stranger. The tomb that shouldn't be empty, the metal that fell from space, the genome that shouldn't carry foreign blood, the pyramid that shouldn't stand. Egypt built its monuments to last forever. It just never told us everything it buried alongside them. And somewhere, right now, someone is digging up the next one.